Hello and welcome everyone. I am Laura Rogers, Microsoft MVP, and this is SharePoint Power Hour. This is a weekly show where I demo things in SharePoint and Office 365 that you can do with pretty much out-of-the-box functionality. I'm not a programmer. I do have a background as a server admin, so you'll every now and then you'll let me see me doing things in the server settings and things like that. But I don't know code, so everything I do in SharePoint, building custom business solutions, is done with all the out-of-the-box functionality, as much out-of-the-box functionality as I can in there. And I do a ton of forms and workflows in just my day-to-day SharePoint work. The other day I spoke at the Atlanta user group meeting, and that was a lot of fun. So hi everybody who might be watching for the first time that I met at the Atlanta user group meeting. I drove over there on Monday, and somebody asked me what's a Microsoft MVP, and I kind of forget and I don't realize that sometimes when you say Microsoft MVP, people think that you actually work for Microsoft. I don't work for Microsoft. Microsoft MVPs are awards that Microsoft gives to those of us in the community. So all Microsoft MVPs are not Microsoft employees. And it's an award where they let you know they appreciate your community contributions. And so that's what it is. I'm not a Microsoft employee. I have my own company. It's called IW Mentor, and it's a SharePoint training company. So today's demo, I'm going to talk about SharePoint Designer 2013 workflows and how to get user information in them. This is a fun one because back in SharePoint 2010 workflows, you might have noticed that they actually had some actions in there and the ability to go dig into user profile information and use that in your SharePoint 2010 workflow. Get who the user's manager is, get information about the user, and it was a source in the workflow that you could utilize as part of the workflow. In SharePoint 2013 workflows, those actions don't exist anymore. So that's kind of one of the big negatives, is that you don't have those user information actions. Well, a couple months ago, I did a power hour kind of talking about how powerful the call web service action is in SharePoint Designer. So what I've done today is I'm going to show you how you can tap into the user information using that web service call in a SharePoint Designer 2013 workflow. In a 2010 workflow, it's in there already. There's an action called Get Manager. There's a data source called User Information. You don't need to do anything special, but 2013 workflows, you do. So you guys looking forward to this? I'm glad to see you all in the chat window. If you are new to this, we're at iwmentor.slack.com, and in the description for this video there is if you've never joined it, there's a form to fill out to be able to join into the chat with us. So hi everybody, and the good thing about me doing these live demos is that we can have a conversation and you guys can ask me questions live and we can kind of work things out together. You never know what's going to happen with a live demo, right? All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen and talk about some of these concepts. So let's get SharePoint Designer, crack that open. So what I've done is I've got a little bit, let's see if I could zoom in. I don't think I can zoom into that any further, but I've got a workflow that I kind of started putting together that it kind of bare bones gives us a way to look at what's going on inside of the user information list. And I put a link in the general channel in there to a reference that I used where basically is somebody showing how to see this user information list. So he's basically just pointing out how to get to that and how to query things in it. So when I delve into the user information list, and if I just spit out do a web service call just to this user information list, I'll show you kind of what it spits out it's a bunch of JSON. So we talked about JSON the other day when we were talking, when I kind of introduced this concept, and it basically, it's got all the information about all the users and groups and everything. This is the user information list in your site. This is not the user profile service. So I wanted to get that straight up front, that this is not the user profile service. This is the user information list from that site, but it does have all the information about the users that is contained in that list. So it's got, and I'll talk about the fields in a little bit, but it's got users and groups and some nice little fields that we can utilize in our workflows to be able to, obtain a little bit more insight about somebody that is involved in the workflow, whether it's the person running it or the person that something is being routed to, or somebody in a people field, so we can get information about those people. So when you query the user information list, it's going to spit out just that big blob of JSON code that I showed you. But what you can do is you can do this little extra filter. And let me see if I can zoom in here. Magnifier. Whoa. That is intense. Okay, let me go over here. Can you guys see that? Okay, so you can do a filter, and this is in that blog post that I referenced. You can do a filter that returns just people, because there's a whole other thing we could tap into there with groups and doing things with groups, and that's really powerful too. So what I really want to show you in here is kind of, if you're advanced enough, kind of some of the directions you can go when you start digging into this, and things that you can obtain, and hopefully you can get creative with some of the things that you can find. So what I've done in here is I started just testing this on a very simple list where I have a people picker that's got a person's name in it. The people picker is called VP. So I wanted to just get information about that one user who is in that VP people field. So I obtained username as one of the fields in the user information list, and I'm able to get see if it equals the VP, and basically it returns one record. So it's going to go find the one username in the user information list that equals that VP, that person, and it's going to give me all detailed information about them. Now I could do different things, like say and department equals, and then type a department name in, or pick a department field value from some field in the list, and then return a whole bunch of people. So I don't have to just query one person. I can just say department equals something, or office equals something, or again, think about all the fields that you have available. Let me zoom back out. There we go. Whew. Let me get rid of that magnifier thing. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So this test that I ran returns a little bit of information about just the one person. So first of all, just doing this query, let me show you what this looks like. So username, I put username equals, and I chose the current items VP, and this is a people field called VP, and I'll just flip over and show you that real quick. People field called VP, so you can kind of see what I'm basing this on. So here, a people field called VP. So that's the list that I'm looking at. And this is the list that the workflow's running on. So it's going out and querying the user information list and finding the one user, for whatever item this is running on, where the VP equals that person's name. So here's what it returns, and I'll show you a little. So this is a very specific subset of information. So it returns one record, because there's one user that has that email address. So that's, email addresses are going to be unique, right? So that's a great way to get that unique value. No, Carlos, I haven't talked about the Microsoft Staff Hub. That's brand new, huh? That just kind of rolled out. I need to try that out, but that's a good I need to remember to try and do a power hour about that. Thanks. All right, so you following me so far? This is all information about one person. So if you went into there's a hidden list in your SharePoint site called the user information list. So if you went into that list, these would be some of the fields that you would see in there. Again, it's not everything from the user profile service. All right, so I've got work email and I've got username. Looks like work email and username are the same thing. So me seeing username in here is how I knew to go use that in my query, where I'm going to say username equals and then the person in the people field, basically. So I can get their phone number, I can get their about me information, I can get their office if I have one of those, I can get their picture. This is your picture from the user profile service. I'll show you something fun that I did with that. And then, you know, again, just user information. Their manager is in here as well, so I can get their manager and be able to tap into that and use that in my workflow. So what am I going to do with that? So I go and get that information about the person, and then what I can do is I get all the results. I can count and see how many items I'm getting. A lot of this count stuff I use is just for testing, so I can see what's going on when I'm doing this. And then I'm going to take the results, and so the word that I'm typing here and for these results is the word that I saw in all that code that I was looking at. So I just saw the word department, I saw the word picture. I can do, I'm just going to copy and paste this, and I can do manager. I don't have a manager. We can go look at, you know, kind of query maybe some users that might have a manager value, and then I need to spit that out to a different variable, maybe call it VP manager, it's a string. Now this one, so what I'm doing is, again, this was all just kind of testing it, so I'm logging this information. So I'll go copy this, paste this, and I'm going to log this other one. So all I'm doing here is getting a few fields. This D results thing is I'm grabbing some information from inside of that JSON results thing and just logging some of those specific pieces of information. Okay, so then what I started testing here is this ability to, you know, what I could do in an email. So I was trying to test something fun. I was trying to make it so that it spits out the person's picture. So it's going to query and get that person's information, and then I wanted to put the person's picture in an email. So what I did, and I'm gonna go ahead and just delete this and start from scratch. We'll go ahead and log this information, and I'll just say go to end of workflow. We're just gonna basically just log a bunch of information and go ahead and just run the workflow on one of these test items. While I'm publishing my workflow, what do you guys think? Oh, thanks, Carlos. That's good to know. Yeah, I saw a blog post about that came out in the past day or two. Okay, so the list that I'm running this on is just my approver lookup field, just because it's a list that I have that's, you know, got a people field in it that I thought I would just try that out to point to it. So what I'm going to do is, I think I've got a user in here. Well, let me leave that one alone. Let me try one that's got, I think I've got a user called Billy Bob in here. And I'm going to run that one on that user. So this workflow is just really just looking at that BP field. So I have this just so I can manually run the workflow, just because I've been testing it a bunch. So I can go to workflows and just manually run test user information. Are you guys excited? This is some fun, nerdy stuff. Okay. Have you guys had the need, you guys give me some feedback in the chat window. Have you guys had the need to do stuff like this? Has it been a big gap for you where you can't do it in 2013 workflows anymore? So let me go ahead and click on this workflow and see how it's doing. Okay, it ran. All right, so it counted one item. It didn't, whatever this logging was, it didn't put anything. I think that was the manager one. And then it logged the department, and then it logged the person. Let's see. Okay, so it's logging some information that it's spitting out. Let me see. Go back to here. Maybe pick department. Okay. So it didn't log the picture, but it did log the manager. So the person doesn't have a picture in their profile, but they do have a manager. Let me go see. Yeah. So their manager is, and so this is good to know. This is why we do logging, so that we can see exactly what it's going to spit out. What is the value of that manager field? So this is, they have no picture. This is IT, and the value of the manager field. So when we're using the manager field in the future to do something or query something, we'll know that this is the syntax. And remember, so back when we're looking at the user information list and specific information about one user, you can see that account here. See this account field? This is the same syntax as what it was spitting out for the manager name. So something else I could do in my workflow would be to go call the web service again, where the account is basically this, the manager, and then I could go get all the detailed information about the person's manager if I wanted to. So again, think about that. I'm not going to go like through step by step. Maybe I'll write a blog post about this, but I'm not going to go through step by step about how to do every single thing in this demo. But hopefully you guys, I'm showing you enough that you can kind of see what's behind the scenes here, and you can play around, especially using some of the syntax in that guy's blog post that I shared with you. I should shout out to who that was. Let me see. Here we go. This is Bogdan Tengen. So this is the blog post that I was using to just see what the syntax is of some filters that you can do. So this is how you get the person. This is how you can do multiple filters like I did, where I said content type equals person and username equals whoever the VP is. So he goes into several different kind of ways that you can do this and how you can even sort things, etc. Let me close that. Okay. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is show you some fun stuff that I can do with that email and how you can actually make it show the user's picture. Okay, I'll do an email action and email these users, and let's see who I'm going to send it to. I'll just send it to, I'll just make it go to me because I created this item, and a subject, and I'll put VP info, and I'll just put the pretty name of the VP. So this is again a people field, so I can just put their display name nice and pretty here. Okay, and then I can put department and put the person's department. So remember, that's a variable. I call the variable VP department, and I can put manager. If there's a manager, it would tell me who that is. In SharePoint 2010 workflows, if you tried to do something with the manager field and there was no manager, the whole workflow would actually error out. So this is actually good that it will just spit out a blank if there's no manager. So I've got department, manager, and then watch what I'm going to do with the picture. So I can't put a picture in here just in the regular editor for an email, but I can go to these. Let's see, you can't really see. Let me scroll down a little. I can go to the advanced properties for this email action. Have you guys seen this before? So I went to the advanced properties, and this is where I can actually directly edit the HTML of my email. Good tip, Carolyn. In the results action, you should always put in the JSON label for what you want to pull out, what happens if you don't put like department after / results. Yeah, when you're typing in there, you have to go find that exact, what the value is. So you have to kind of look at the results that are getting spit out and go look at what the exact property names are. Edward says, what is the relationship between workflows and flow? Is flow the new workflows, or will they complement each other going forward? There isn't really a relationship between them. Flow is sort of the new way that Microsoft's doing it. There's no further development on SharePoint Designer workflows, but there are still a ton of things that you can do in SharePoint Designer workflows that you can't do in Flow yet. But there are also some cool new things you can do in Flow that you haven't ever been able to do in SharePoint Designer workflows. For example, go across sites and across webs and across services. So, I did a whole other SharePoint Power Hour all about Flow too, and we actually had somebody from the Flow product team from Microsoft there in the chat window answering questions, and it was a lot of fun. They will kind of complement each other. So, technically you can do things in SharePoint. It's really just a matter of what's your trigger. If my trigger is an item getting created in SharePoint, I can have that trigger a flow, but I could also have that trigger a SharePoint Designer workflow. But right now it's kind of in flux. So you can't do everything in Flow that you can do in SharePoint Designer. So it's going to be like a gradual thing where, when you find things that you can transition that are maybe simpler or maybe have the functionality in Flow that you can't do in Designer, then that's where you're going to start going that direction. All right, watch this. So this is the HTML of my email. So I can see that I've got manager. And again, I'm not a programmer. I'm just kind of looking at this, just, figuring it out. And what I can do is put an image in here. So let me put like a line break here and then and don't put spaces or page breaks or line breaks in here when you do this. IMG SRC equals. And then I have that workflow variable where I pulled the person's picture. And I did this just by trial and tribulation earlier, right, like 20 minutes before Power Hour. I have to use this URL. If I return field as and just return it as a string, it's going to come back with the whole string that's got basically this whole thing in one big blob, which is really the URL in there twice. So I really just need the URL. So when you're dealing with hyperlinks in SharePoint, there are always two parts to them. There's the description, there's actually the hyperlink, and then the description. In this case, the hyperlink and description are the exact same value, but those are the two parts to your URL. So I just need the URL, and so that's when I return it as. If I don't return as URL, it's not going to show as a picture in this email. So I return it as a URL, and I can even do something fun and let me put quotes around it, alt equals, and maybe put the person's name, do VP display name. All right, so that's image IMG SRC blah blah blah. Got quotes around it, got quotes around that. Looks like it'll work. And then after you've done this though and put your image in your workflow email, don't go back into the regular editor and try and do stuff, because it will break whatever you did in HTML. So just tip of the day. Thanks, G. Goulian. I'm glad you like that. That's a fun one. I think I wrote a blog post about doing email and workflows and images. I'm not sure. Yes, so that's how you can tap into a person's picture. And I just literally figured that out like half an hour ago, right before I was starting Power Hour. So I've never actually done it in the real world. Now, of course, if your users haven't put a profile picture there and etc., it's not gonna show anything. Okay, so let's go back to, I just made myself learn it, right? Because I knew I was about to do Power Hour and I needed to just figure the stuff out. Okay, so now I'm going to go just back up to my little test list I have here. And I'm going to pick one because I know I have a profile picture, and I'm going to pick one that's got me as the VP. So I'll go ahead and just run that workflow on that one. So notice that in this list, just kind of a little tip is, as we created this approver lookup list, which I do a lot in the business solutions I create so that you can have lookup information about routing things to people, maybe depending on what department they're in and things like that. You could make it, instead of having people have to fill out this department field, you could make the workflow run as soon as you create this approver lookup item, and go get the department and then put it in the department field for you. So this is just something that I had just typed in there at some point when I created this, but just going to keep that in mind. So this is the one that I just ran it on. Let's go see. I think I got an email. Here it is. And look at that. Department IT manager. I don't have a manager, remember? And then I just put a line break and then I put my picture. Cool, huh? Nerd golf clap. Yay. Yeah, that's how you do that. So yeah, just keep in mind that when people are receiving emails with pictures in them, and I did write a blog post about this, I think, because somebody commented on the other day about, you know how when you're in Outlook and you open up an email that's got pictures in it, but it's from a sender that you haven't trusted yet. So all the pictures show kind of like with little red X's on them, and it says trust this sender or whatever, so that it will render the pictures. Well, end users are going to come across that when you're kind of depending on where the pictures are that you're putting in your email. Apparently I didn't have that issue. My picture's just in my user profile. So it was fine, but just kind of keep that in mind. That's one of the comments that somebody made on my blog the other day about that they didn't like the fact that it had all the little red X's on it. So yay. Thanks, guys. All right, so that's one thing that you can do with this. So let's think about a way that I can create and have an actual form that someone's filling out. And I'm just going to make this up as I go along. Have a form that someone's filling out for just some kind of request form that needs to get approved by somebody. So we'll go ahead and see how much of this we can get built. But I'm going to go, I've got this little maintenance request list that is just, again, just think of, brainstorm different types of requests that you could have in your company, and it's just got 2 fields in it. It's not, there's nothing to it. I'm actually going to take info path off of this thing because I think this is something I created a while back. That actually surprised me because I'm not used to using info path anymore. I don't usually put that on lists anymore. All right, so now I'm going to have, let's see, there we go. Ooh, I like that. That's actually kind of new. So if it's a Boolean, if it's a yes, no field in a regular SharePoint custom list, and you're using just this new modern look, it's automatically showing it as a toggle field. Huh. All right. So I'm going to build a workflow on my maintenance request list. So we'll go, I'm actually going to leave this open so I can toggle back and forth to it, so I can copy some of this stuff. And I'll go to workflows and do a new one on my maintenance request. Let me just refresh this for fun. And again, remember, this is only the user information list from the people that have ever either been to this site collection, or their name is used somewhere in a people picker in this site collection. So I'm not going to be able to just go query out of everybody in the organization. So that's kind of important. You're not going to be able to have like a brand new user that's maybe never gone to this site and have it find them or do something with them. Let's see, new maintenance. And I think I've actually got some other test workflow on this same list. So what I'm going to do is go over to my maintenance request list and just really quick look. Okay, it looks like I don't have any, so that's good. All right. Okay, new maintenance. So what I'm going to do is I got to build a dictionary. I'm going to copy that and paste it over. The pain in the butt thing about this build a dictionary thing is it doesn't paste it over. It doesn't paste the dictionary, the array, the information in it. So I have to go manually type it. So what I do is I usually just go copy this part, which is the complicated part. And again, I wrote a blog post about, it's called Looping Through Tasks. If you just go to wonderlaura.com and look for, do a search for loop, it'll have like this part, this syntax in there. So that's why I'm not kind of going over what's in that. So I've got accept and then content type. And those are just the standard two things that I always type in here. All right, and then I can actually copy a few of these. You don't have to do the count results thing, but a lot of the time I use that for troubleshooting. So I'm actually just going to copy a whole bunch of these. Copy and paste. Now it is going to be a little bit confused because I have a couple of references that were to that list that I was in. So that might be why it's not pasting over there. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't try so many at once. Let me see. I'll just do this one and try that. There we go. Okay, so this. Okay, so what is my new query going to be? When someone fills out a maintenance request, what? You guys give me some ideas. You guys give me some feedback in the chat window about what kind of typical things that your maintenance request. Now, there is a little bit of a delay, so I'm just going to start going. But typical things that you might want to happen or information you might want to happen when someone fills out just some kind of request. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter to go find a person, and I'm going to say manager equals, let's see, no, username equals, and then I'm going to say, let's see, I want to get the manager of the current user. So I'm going to get the current user, so whoever's filling out the request, current item, created by, and then I'm going to go get their login name. So username equals, no, it was actually email address. So how do I know this? Because username over here in this syntax, see, that's an email address, right? So I'm going to go find that user, that one record for the person filling out the request. So I'm going to go get that user information. But then from within that user information, that's when I'm going to go figure out who their manager is, because maybe I want their manager to get, that's pretty typical, right? The manager should get that email. So I'll go ahead and go back and copy some. Now, none of this stuff really has any references to the specific list I was in, so I should just be able, let me move this out of the way, should just be able to paste this. Look at that. So it did a lot of work. I had a lot of work I did previously. So it's just referencing in variables and stuff like that. So notice that when I pasted from this other workflow, it just created all the variables for me. Nice, right? So it's not going to be VP though, so I might want to rename those and make them called something else. So you guys are saying who's reporting it, where it is, condition, and certain amount of time has passed. Ooh, you guys are getting fancy. All right, I love doing workflows on the fly. Okay, so I'm going to get, the manager is really what I need from this one. And I'm going to call it, I'm going to get their department. That's useful. I need that. But then I'm going to get their manager. I'm going to call this get variables. I want this to run when a new item is created. And let me go back in here. And I want to go ahead and get their department, and I'm just going to put their department in a field in this list. Ooh, fancy, right? So go to list settings, and I've actually got, there's already an existing out of the box site column called department. I'll just add that. So I'm going to make it get that information about the user, and then get their manager and their department, and then fill that in. And then I've even got their picture, and I can maybe put their picture in the email that goes to the manager. That is so fancy. Okay, so then I'm going to log some information. So how do I send an email to who the manager is? So let's just try email. And I could do like assigning tasks and stuff like that. I'm not going to do assigning tasks, but we'll just say workflow variable. And this is the manager, and I didn't rename this variable. That's the manager, basically, of the person who filled out the request. And then I'm going to say new maintenance request. And I'm going to say just who it's from, created by. There we go. And I can put information about the request. What were some of these fields? Let's see. Subject. I'm just going to put the subject in here. And you notice that it had a field called emergency, yes or no. I could even do things with maybe some conditions in the workflow that, you know, if I'm assigning a task, I can make the due date sooner, whether, you know, depending on if it's an emergency or not, and I can do all kinds of fun stuff like that. So I'll just put the subject in here. And when you guys take my 4-day workflows and forums very advanced class, iwmentor.com, we spend like days doing this. Like, it's very intensive, and it's a whole bunch of SharePoint Designer 2013 workflows, troubleshooting, like digging in and, you know, understanding all this stuff, and lots of labs. So it's a lot of fun to me. I really enjoy this stuff. So here's the subject of the request, and then the requester, and I can put the person's name. I already put it in the subject, but I can go ahead and put that here as a display name. And then I can do the fancy thing with the picture properties. And so I've got requester, and I've got their name, and then I'll just put a bigger page break this time. My workflow variable for their picture as a URL. Thank you so much for posting the link to my site there. That's nice. And okay, so I've got image src. I think I got my syntax right in there. Okay, so it's going to send an email to the manager, and then it's going to update the current item. Now, remember, I added that field, the new field that has department. I added that after I already had this workflow open, so it went ahead and hit refresh, so this workflow will be able to recognize that I added a new field. Fausto says, would it be an overkill to log a lot of the workflow steps? No, especially when you're first creating your workflow. Put a ton of logging in there, and that's one of the big things that I teach in my workflow class is log often and put a lot of logging in there, especially when you're creating it and troubleshooting it, so you'll see exactly what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to send an email send an email to the manager, and then I'm going to set a field value. Let's see if it finds, there's departments, and then I'm going to put the department as the department of that person. All right, and then what are some of the other things that we want to do? So we'd want to send an email to the manager, and then we'd want to potentially, the next step after that could be, like if we were going through multiple steps of a process, would be to go send an email to the VP, and that's where that approver lookup comes in handy, right? So I can send an email to the VP where the department is equal to whatever this person's department is. So I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm just going to go ahead and publish this and see what happens. And yeah, there we go. So that's going to run each time I create a new maintenance request. So let's see what I broke, and let's see if it works or not, because I usually have to publish and try again and republish and try some other things and republish. That's like the entire story of my life. So it's always fun, like figuring out what little side things I'm going to work on while I'm waiting for my workflows to publish. Okay, so let's go to the list. Let's get ready to submit a new maintenance request, which should trigger this new workflow. So what is the subject? Broken. Let's see, lights have gone out. There we go. Emergency. So I could actually hide this department field, right? So that it's not something they have to fill out, because the workflow is going to fill it out for them. You guys already know how to do that though, right? You know how to just hide a field real quick. Okay, so lights have gone out, and then let me go ahead and refresh this. So it's getting the variables. Of course, I think I just had one big stage in there. So let's go see how it's progressing along. It started, so it's just running right now. It's going to take a few seconds. Dun, dun, dun. As I was testing this too, they were pretty slow. Are you guys trying this all right now? You're going to go home and try this and figure it out. Oh, look at that. So it got one. It logged my picture, my profile picture. It did IT, but then guess what? I don't have a manager. So it ran it as me, but I don't have a manager. So it's not going to have anybody to send it to. So let's go see if it errors out or what it does. I had to mess something up, right? I had to make it. It can't go perfect the first time I try it. So it still says activity in progress. I think it's probably going to give me some kind of error, like there is no, couldn't find a person or something like that. It's definitely going to give me an error. It's just how long is it going to take to do that? So what do I need to do? So in the real world, what do you want to happen when the person doesn't have a manager? Now, if your AD is set up all perfectly correct, then the only person in the whole company that's not going to have a manager is the CEO, right? So this should only be happening to one person. If you need help with your Active Directory and getting organized, I highly recommend you guys take a look at hyperfish.com. That's a new company. It's a new product that they can actually help you automate, streamline, and fix your AD issues. Little tip of the day there. But you got to think of what you want to happen if somebody doesn't have a manager. But I'm also going to go ahead and log in as a different user, one that does have a manager, and go ahead and run the workflow as that person. So let me see. I'm going to log in as Billy Bob, because Billy Bob's manager is me. And I'm just doing this in another browser window, because you know your browsers get all confused when you are trying to log in as different people, right? Have you guys experienced that in Office 365? Okay, so Billy Bob doesn't have a profile picture. I could have sworn I put one in there for him at some point. Yeah, oh well. So his is going to have the correct part where it actually goes to a manager, but it's not going to be able to have a picture in the email. So broken window. Well, I already used that one. I'll go broken door or something like that. So now we've got a couple of different things going on. So let's go see what happened with this other one. I'll go refresh this and see if it errored out. It just didn't do anything, which is good because, you know, you don't want it to, you know, all of a sudden error out because of some information about a user being missing. But no manager is going to get an email though. So you're probably going to want to accommodate for that. So what you can do in here is do what? An if statement, right? If workflow variable manager is empty, then I can email the person that sent this, I guess. Say, so maintenance. Your maintenance request was submitted, but you have no manager, so it didn't know who to route it to or something like that. You see what I'm saying? So, and then otherwise, if they do have a manager, then do the email where it emails the manager. Make sense? Now, then it's setting this department. So we can go look and see if that did that correctly. So let me go ahead and publish that and go look at what happened over here. So lights have gone out. Look at that. It put the department in there. Very cool. And then let's go look at the other one in here that Billy Bob filled out for, let me see. Let me do my created by. Okay, yeah, Billy Bob created that one, and it filled in his department too. And then let's go see my Office 365 email. Cool. So it sent me the email. So it looked and saw that I was his manager, and it did send the email telling me the subject and the requester, and then it just doesn't have, he doesn't have a picture. So that is another nerd golf clap moment. This has been a lot more successful than last week was kind of painful with power apps and controls and kind of trying to painfully go through figuring some of that out on the fly. But yeah, so let's see, I've got what, like 12 minutes left. So I'll show you kind of the way you could do that approver stuff. The next stage that you could do would be to, you could be, you know, sending an email to the manager, but we could also just make it like assign a task. So let me go do that. I'll move this up. I usually avoid task actions. I don't know if you guys have heard some of my rants about my issues with task actions in here. But what I want to do is I'll show you how this whole thing could play out with a task action. So let me put this if back in here, and I'll go task, assign, I'll start a task process, and then the first approver is the manager, right? And then the next approver is the VP. Now, what if for some reason they have some weird department name in their profile that doesn't have a VP in the list with that department name? That could happen, right? That has happened. So you'd also have to accommodate for that in the workflow and make it say, you know, basically if there's no VP, then do something. So I'm going to go ahead and take that, get that VP information and just set it as a variable before I even do anything else with it. So I'll just do set workflow variable, and I'll just say, I'll just call it requesters department VP. Nice and descriptive. 2, and here's the fun part where we go over to the approver lookup. Approver, it apparently is what I call that list. Approver lookup, and get the VP field where, so I'll just go ahead and just get their login name, which VP do I want to get? I want to get the VP where the department is equal to this department that I've obtained from the person filling out the form. That is so much fun. Okay, so then I can even log that. Requesters department VP. So I'm getting the person's VP, I'm logging it. So then when I do my task process, who am I sending it to? I'm sending it to two different variables basically. I'm doing the person's manager and just as a string because it's already just got the correct value. And then the next one I'm doing is the requesters department VP as a string, and then maintenance request. Blah, blah, blah. Due dates, that's a whole other story. And then do I want it to send overdue emails? Sure. Every day for five times. And then click OK. All right, so now it's going to do a task process. So let's go ahead and now one of my issues with the task process is that you can't really tell or do anything in between the different people that the process is going through. So that's a whole other power hour though. And that's another one of those things that I go through in that workflows class as we go through, like I spend about an hour building out a task process type thing using these tasks where you can see and control kind of what it does between them. And let's go see what happens with this one. I think I should go ahead and make it run as Billy Bob because Billy Bob has a manager, and then that way it will actually have values for all of those. So let's go Billy Bob, logged in as Billy Bob, and Billy Bob's going to fill out another request. So carpet snag, tripping on it. That's an emergency, right? Okay, so let's see. All right, so carpet snag. People in their emergencies, right? Okay, so the workflow is running. I'm going to refresh this again. Let's see. It keeps telling me to set my stupid time zone. Okay, there we go. So I can tell the workflow, set the department. I'm just going to ignore that. And then I can go look at what it's doing. One item, department is IT. Here's the manager, and then VP, and then the person filling it out. Let's see, where did I log? Log variable requesters department VP. See, I probably should have made my logging a little bit more descriptive too. So let me show you what I mean by that. So instead of log variable VP pic, I can say picture URL and then actually put, so I'm being descriptive. So I'm not just directly logging just all these values, and when the logging gets spit out, I don't know what any of it is. So instead I can go, so manager, wait, not manager. What was that one? Picture, VP manager, VP department. I'm just gonna skip that one. I really don't need whatever that was. I just need to see the difference between the manager and the VP. Users, manager. And then I've got, see, this is where it's logging the requesters department VP. I think that might be the part that didn't have one, but I'm not sure because I'm just logging a variable. I'm not describing what it is. Okay, and then there we go. As string, sure, and click OK. And then I've got it, if manager is empty, send an email. So let's go see, let's go make sure that it didn't send an email saying, no, it's assigning me my task. So that's good. It actually did send me my task to be assigned, but I was just, the logging wasn't very descriptive as to what it had actually done. So we'll go ahead and go take a look at this task and go ahead and approve it. But the next time we run the workflow, we'll be able to have more logging. We'll be able to tell what's going on in there better. So let me go ahead and publish. Oops. Let me go ahead and publish that. Start a task process and go. Okay. Maintenance requests, and let's go look at this screen again, and it's going to show me, so here's the task that got assigned to me, and I can go ahead and approve that and then see if it goes to the next person. And that's another one of those negatives to me about that task process, is that if I make changes or fixes to the workflow and publish them, all those task processes that are currently out there running and waiting for somebody to do something, those are still running the old version of the workflow, which has caused me many headaches in the past. Okay, so now I can see, let me go ahead and refresh this and see if it's actually getting assigned to the right person. Look at that. So it assigned it to Billy Bob, and I think that that's why it confused me, because when I go over and look at my list of approvers, Billy Bob is the VP of the IT department. There you go. So it did it correctly. It went ahead and assigned that next task to Billy Bob. I actually had a customer one time with some processes that I was creating for them where it wasn't just, you know, I fill out a form and it goes to my manager, then it goes to VP, and then it goes to the CEO, and then it's done. At each one of these steps, it had to know if the person filling out the form was a VP, then it had to skip the part where it goes to your manager because the person's VP. Anyway, so basically, if you started off as a VP, the only approval level you would have would be CEO. So I had to dynamically within each one of these approval levels do all this crazy logic that looked at kind of the role of the current person filling out the request, because they didn't want the end users to have all these redundant things they had to go through for the people that were already kind of higher up in the chain. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of fun stuff that you could do tapping into this and being able to use that user information. I'll go ahead and you can see that it worked. It finished successfully. Let me go ahead and refresh this. And the whole workflow completed and it worked fine. Cool. Just another little tip is that my friend Fabian Williams wrote a couple of posts about, remember I told you about the user profile service and how the user profile service is not what we're using. We're just using the user information list. Well, when I tried to just tap directly into the user profile service, I got these access denied issues, and it's because there's all this extra stuff that you have to do because you're tapping into this. It's not just a list in your SharePoint site, it's actually a whole other, like at the service, your service account stuff. So you have to do all this extra stuff like this cookie X request and blah 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 extra stuff to be able to tap into either other site collections, user profile service, and stuff like that. So I went ahead and posted Fabian's link that has all that complexity that you'd go through. And if you want to not just do the user information list and do the user profile service, or go across site collections and stuff like that with these web service calls. Argundu says, can you do Power Off session on Nintex workflows and forms? Well, I did one. It's, let me pull that up for you. Let's see. I didn't do it on workflows. I did it on, get that pulled up. I did a whole playlist here of forms product comparisons. So I did a whole one on Nintex forms here. I'll post that in the chat window there. But maybe potentially I could do one on their workflows. Thanks for the suggestion. So what other? I think I got another good suggestion here. Oh yeah, it was that other new product that Microsoft just came out with, the Staff Hub. That's another good one. So I'll go ahead and let me wrap this up. Go back over here. Thanks everybody for coming this week. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoy kind of digging in and figuring out SharePoint workflows and demoing that on the fly. It's something that I'm much more comfortable in than Power Apps is brand new. So last week was a little awkward, but I've been doing SharePoint workflows for like 10 years, so it's a lot more intuitive to me. Next week, I'm having my friend Nick Bertoli, who's local. He's going to come over and sit here in front of the green screen with me in my basement and do SharePoint Power Hour. He's going to talk about authentication and hybrid stuff. And he actually does a lot of community work with the SharePoint community. I think it used to be SharePoint-community.net. Maybe they recently updated it. I need to look that up. But Nick is going to be here next week, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have to figure out, like, fit 2 people in front of the screen and and get that figured out. So looking forward to that. And thanks everybody so much for coming. I'm glad that you enjoyed, learning how to do images in a workflow email, if nothing else. So yeah, thanks. Well, I guess over and out, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good afternoon.